My table saw to make all the bevel cuts with the blade also tilted at 5 degrees to match the frame. That's going to fit pretty good. Now, no glue here, just nails. I want it to be able to move around. The door for our washstand consists of stiles, rails, and a raised panel, and they're held together with mortise and tenon joints. The first thing I want to do is make a groove to hold the panel in these 4 frame members. Now there's one of the mortises in the stile, about 1 3/4 inches deep, and I made it using my drill press, which is outfitted with this mortising attachment. And it's really nothing more than a square chisel with a drill that goes down through it. And the drill does most of the work, and the chisel just squares it up. On the original door, I noticed that the inner edges of the stiles and rails were just slightly beveled. It's very subtle. So to do that, I've set up my joiner, and I've tilted the fence to 15 degrees, and now I'll run the pieces through. Okay, now I'm ready to start working on the tenons, and this is what a finished tenon will look like. The first cut that I want to make is this shoulder cut right here, which is on the inside of the door. So I've set up a gauge block, which gives me the right length for the tenon, and I've raised the blade to the proper height. Now I'll run the rails through. Now I'm ready to make this little haunch cut in the tenon. And that's necessary because when you slip it together into the stile, you don't want to have a gap from the groove, and that fills that space up. The next thing I want to do is make the cheek cuts on each side of the tenon. Now, because the tenon is not perfectly centered, there'll be 2 setups. But first I'll cut the side that's the face side of the door. I'll use my 10-inch jig, and I'm all set up to go. Okay, that should be the adjustment for the other side. Well, you could raise a panel for a door a lot of different ways. You could use a table saw, you could use a router, but nothing beats the shaper. It does the best job. That panel fits in there pretty good. No glue there, though. That should just float. I've already applied the glue to the tenons. And we'll just slip this stile on, clamp it up, and pin it all together with some dowels. Okay, those are all the parts for my drawer. Here are the 2 sides, and I've already used a dado cutter to put a groove along the bottom edge for the plywood. I've also put a groove at this end of the side piece, and that's for the back to fit into. Now the front piece, which I just rabbited along the bottom edge and the ends, will be connected to the side piece by means of half-blind dovetails. Okay, let's see how that fits together. This is known as a half-blind dovetail because you only see one side of it. That's pretty good. Now with this little sliding jig that rides on my rip fence, I'm able to chamfer the edges on the front of the draw front, just like the original. These biscuits, with a little bit of glue, will secure the washstand to the base. Okay, it looks pretty good. Now there's only one more detail left. Well, it looks like this is ready for some paint and some stain. Well, now the finishing scheme for our washstand is to paint the bottom a nice putty color. And up at the top, I'm going to use a clear, water-soluble polyurethane because paint might chip, and I don't want to cover up these dovetails. I want them to show. Now, this will give me a nice, hard, durable finish. It won't yellow. Now, this is the first of two coats for the base. It's a latex underbody. It's not the final color. That goes on next. Well, what do you think? The manufacturer of this acrylic latex paint named it Hancock Gray, maybe after the Hancock Shaker Village. It's a nice old-timey color. Well, that's what our washstand looks like when it's all painted and urethane. And I can think of at least a dozen places where I can use this piece around my home.